The security footage timestamp reads 2:14 a.m. The parking lot is empty. The fluorescent lights inside the gas station hum against the stillness of the night. And then, without warning, the automatic doors slide open for something that was never meant to walk through them. Nobody called for help right away. Nobody reported it to wildlife services or posted it online. The young employee who reviewed the footage the next morning simply sat back in his chair, rubbed his eyes, and watched it again. Because what he saw didn't look like an animal that had wandered in by accident. It didn't look confused or frightened or lost. It looked, in every possible way, like something that knew exactly what it was doing, and that was the part nobody could explain. The gas station sits just off a two-lane highway on the outskirts of a small town in the American Southeast, the kind of place where the tree line begins almost immediately behind the property and the woods press close against the edge of the parking lot like they're waiting for something. It is the sort of town where wildlife sightings aren't uncommon: a deer in a front yard, a possum under the dumpster, the occasional raccoon making a mess of a trash bin at 3 in the morning. People expect a certain amount of wildness at the margins. They've made their peace with it. But a bobcat is different. A bobcat is not a raccoon. It is not a stray cat grown large on leftovers. It is a predator, compact and muscled, built for silence and speed, with eyes that catch the light in a way that reminds you, immediately and without apology, that you are looking at something wild. Adult bobcats in the Southeast typically weigh between 15 and 30 pounds, but they carry themselves with the quiet authority of something much larger. They do not, under ordinary circumstances, walk into gas stations in the middle of the night, and yet, on the footage, she enters through the automatic sliding doors without breaking stride. That detail alone stops everyone who later watches the clip, not the fact that she's there, but the fact that she doesn't hesitate at the threshold. There is no pause, no flinch, no moment of animal uncertainty at the unfamiliar sound of the doors parting. She walks in the way a person walks in, with the low, unhurried confidence of someone running a familiar errand on a quiet night. The interior of the store is lit in the particular flat way of gas stations everywhere, bright enough to see everything clearly but without warmth, without shadow. She moves through that light like she owns it. Her ears rotate slightly as she passes the refrigerator units, tracking the hum of the compressors. Her nose works the air constantly. She does not investigate the whole store. She does not sniff her way along the aisles in the exploratory, uncertain way of an animal trying to make sense of a new place. She moves with direction. She moves as though she already knows the layout, already knows what she came for. She reaches the lower shelf of a snack display near the front counter. Packaged meat products, the kind of high-protein convenience food stacked at eye level for a child or, as it turns out, for a bobcat, and in one clean, practiced motion she takes something in her mouth, turns, and walks back out through the still open doors. The whole visit lasts 43 seconds. The employee who found the footage described his first reaction as laughter. Pure, surprised, delighted laughter, the kind that comes before your brain has fully caught up with what your eyes have shown it. He called a coworker over. They watched it twice, 3 times, and then they laughed again, and the general consensus was that it was extraordinary and strange and probably wouldn't happen again. It happened again the next night. Same timestamp, within 4 minutes of 2:14 a.m., same entry through the sliding doors. Same direct path to the same shelf, same item taken, same unhurried exit. That second night changed the feeling entirely. There is something about repetition, about a behavior that returns unchanged with the reliability of a schedule, that moves it from the category of strange coincidence into the category of something that demands to be understood. The laughter faded. In its place came a quieter, more unsettled curiosity, the kind that sits with you. Why here? Of all the places, why this particular gas station on this particular stretch of road, night after night? There was forest in every direction. There was prey, real prey, the prey a bobcat is built for, available in abundance within 100 yards of the parking lot. She had no reason by any logic anyone could immediately apply to keep returning to a fluorescent-lit convenience store in the middle of the night and take packaged food off a shelf. Unless she did. Unless somewhere between the automatic doors and the tree line, between the hum of the refrigerators and the silence of the woods waiting just beyond the parking lot lights, there was a reason that hadn't revealed itself yet. A reason that would require someone to stop laughing, stop watching the footage from the safety of a back office, and actually follow her. No one was ready to do that yet, but the bobcat came back on the 3rd night, and the 4th, And with each return the question grew heavier, more insistent, quiet in the way that only the most important questions are quiet, pressing against the edges of everything else until it became the only thing anyone in that small store could think about. Word travels fast in a small town. Faster still when there's video. Someone posted the clip on a local Facebook group, one of those community pages that usually exists for lost dogs and yard sale announcements, and by the following afternoon it had been shared over 300 times. People began showing up to the gas station the way people show up to things they don't fully understand but can't stay away from. They parked at the edge of the lot, phones charged, flashlights off, waiting with the particular patience of people who don't want to miss something they'll be talking about for years. The employees didn't turn them away. How could they? They were waiting too. She arrived, as she always did, just past 2 in the morning, but something was different. She cleared the tree line at her usual pace, low, deliberate, unhurried, and then she stopped, completely still at the edge of the parking lot light. Her eyes moved across the gathered crowd with the slow, methodical sweep of an animal taking inventory of a threat. Her ears pressed back, her shoulders dropped slightly, weight shifting forward onto her front legs in a posture that everyone present understood without being told what it meant. The crowd went silent. Nobody had thought, in the excitement of the waiting, about what it might actually mean to be standing 12 feet from a wild predator who had not expected to find them there. The reality of it arrived all at once. The size of her, the stillness, the quality of attention she was giving them. A woman near the back of the group took a slow step behind her husband. A teenager lowered his phone without realizing he'd done it. For a long moment, nothing moved. Then she did. Not away, forward. Fast and low, the way a bobcat moves when it has committed to something and the decision is already behind it. She was through the doors before anyone could react, and back out again in under 30 seconds, and then she was gone, swallowed by the dark at the edge of the lot so completely it was almost difficult to believe she'd been there at all. People exhaled. Someone laughed, shakily. Someone else said something under their breath that might have been a prayer or might have been a curse. But in the quiet that followed, the particular quiet of a crowd that has just been reminded of something it had almost forgotten about the natural world, one question rose above everything else. Not what she was taking, not even why she kept coming back, but where exactly she was going, and whether anyone was brave enough or curious enough to find out. It was one of the older employees who decided to follow her. Not a wildlife expert, not a journalist chasing a story. Just a man in his late 50s who had worked that stretch of highway long enough to know the woods behind the property the way you know the back of your own hand. The deer trails, the creek bed that flooded every spring, the old fence line half swallowed by kudzu. He had grown up in this county. He had hunted these woods as a young man, and something in the way that Bobcat moved, purposeful, unbothered, carrying whatever she carried like it was the only thing in the world that mattered, reminded him of something he couldn't quite name but deeply recognized. He waited until the crowd had gone, then he followed. He kept his distance and his flashlight off, moving by memory and by the thin blue light of a half-moon that filtered through the canopy in broken pieces. He could hear almost nothing. She was that quiet. But he could track the direction she'd gone, and he moved toward it slowly, the way you move when you're trying not to disturb something you don't yet understand. She didn't notice him, or if she did, she didn't care. She moved through the underbrush without hesitation, following a path that wasn't visible but was clearly known to her, worn into her body through repetition, through need, through whatever force drives a mother toward her young with unerring, unrelenting certainty. He almost missed them entirely. She slipped behind the collapsed remains of an old equipment shed at the back edge of the property. Concrete blocks, a rusted tin roof caved in on one side, the whole structure folded into the earth like something the land was slowly reclaiming. He edged around the far side, moving inches at a time, until he could see past the corner. And then he stopped, tucked against the most sheltered wall. Half hidden beneath a sheet of fallen tin were 2 cubs, small enough to hold in one arm, eyes still carrying that wide, unfocused look of animals not long in the world. They stirred when she approached, a weak instinctive reaching toward her, and she lowered herself over them in one smooth motion, dropping the food between her front paws, nudging it toward them with her nose. The man stood in the dark for a long time without moving. He had followed her expecting to find an answer. He hadn't expected the answer to be this simple, this ancient, this quietly devastating. She wasn't stealing, she was just trying to keep them alive. He didn't tell the story loudly. That wasn't his way. He came in the next morning before his shift, made a pot of coffee, and sat down with the store manager at the small table in the back office where they usually talked about inventory and scheduling and the slow leak in the roof above the stockroom. He told her what he'd seen in the same quiet, unhurried way he did most things. No embellishment, no drama, just the facts, laid out plainly. The shed, the tin roof, the two cubs, small enough to fit in the crook of an arm. The manager listened without interrupting. When he finished, she sat with it for a moment. Then she nodded, stood up, and got to work. By that evening, a shallow plastic container sat just outside the automatic doors, set back against the building, out of the foot traffic, in the shadow closest to the tree line. Inside it, packaged meat, the same kind the Bobcat had been taking from the shelf. No fanfare, no cameras pointed at it, no crowd waiting to watch. Just food, left in a place that was safer for her to reach, by people who had finally understood what she needed from them. Nobody talked about it much. It didn't feel like the kind of thing that required a lot of words. She came back that night, as she always did, but she stopped before the doors. She stood at the edge of the light for a long moment, longer than usual, and something in her posture had shifted. The tight, coiled readiness that had defined every previous visit was quieter now. Her ears moved independently, reading the night. Her eyes found the container near the wall, and she approached it without the urgent, compressed speed of an animal operating on the edge of its own limits. She took what was there. She turned back toward the dark. And then, for just a moment, she paused. She stood at the boundary where the parking lot light gave way to the tree line, the food held carefully in her mouth, and she looked back at the store, at the lit interior, the humming coolers, the empty aisles. It lasted only a second or two, long enough to notice, not long enough to explain. Then she was gone, back through the underbrush, back along the path worn into her by need and repetition and the oldest instinct in the world, back to the shed, the fallen tin, the two small bodies pressing toward her warmth in the dark. The automatic doors stayed closed. The parking lot was quiet, and the people inside, without quite knowing how to say it, without quite having the words for what had passed between them and a wild animal over the course of a few unremarkable nights, felt something they hadn't expected to feel at the end of a story like this. Grateful, simply, quietly grateful, to have been trusted even a little by something that owed them nothing at all.